Hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Sunday, the 4th day of May, 2025. Well, the rhetoric is really heating up after a Houthi missile attack on Israel's Ben-Gurion Airport. We're going to talk about that, the threats that Benjamin Netanyahu is making now, not only towards the Houthis in Yemen, but also to Iran. And also, we're going to have somewhat of an exclusive story for you here that I just learned about. I think you'll find very, very interesting. So, this is going to be a very special edition of breaking news here. All right, let's get right to it. Netanyahu threatens the response to the Houthis and Iran as Israel defense fails. Analysts explain how Houthi attacks drain billions. However, we have new intel about a weapon that can stop a mass drone attack. We'll be talking about that. Two mysterious explosions rock Iranian factories within an hour. Well, they keep having these accidents and these explosions. Isn't that something? And finally, Donald Trump suggests it may not be possible to broker a peace in Ukraine as Vladimir Putin leaves open the option to use nuclear weapons. These are some heavy stories. All right, first story. Netanyahu threatens response to Houthis and Iran. This is from Israel HaYom. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on X that Israel would respond to the missile attack on Ben-Gurion Airport. He cited a post by President Donald Trump to emphasize that Israel's next steps are based on principles Trump himself had articulated. Netanyahu issued a public threat on Sunday against the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen and against Iran itself, stating that Israel would retaliate for the missile attack on Ben-Gurion Airport. Writing in English on his official account on X, formerly Twitter, Netanyahu declared President Trump is absolutely right. Attacks by the Houthis emanate from Iran. Israel will respond to the Houthi attack against our main airport and at a time and place of our choosing to their Iranian terror masters. Netanyahu cited a post by Donald Trump, apparently in an effort to underscore that Israel's upcoming actions are aligned with statements made by the president himself. Here's what President Trump wrote on March 17th. You may remember that. Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthis, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen, who are hated by the Yemeni people, all emanate from and are created by Iran, all uppercase letters. Any further attacks or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that that force will stop there. Iran has played, quote, the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they've lost control, but they haven't lost control. They're dictating every move, giving them weapons, supplying them with money and highly sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire. That's from March 17th. All right, now this development comes, of course, after Israel initially agreed to a U.S. request to hold off of military action against the Houthis, allowing Washington to take the lead in responding to the Houthi aggression from Yemen. However, with Israel now poised to alter its approach and potentially take direct action in Yemen, and possibly against Iran, Netanyahu appears keen to emphasize that such decisions are in line with the principles laid out by Donald Trump. In fact, Benny Gantz, the leader of the National Unity Party, demanded direct action against Iran. This is not Yemen, it is Iran. Iran is the one firing ballistic missiles at the state of Israel, and it must be held accountable. The Israeli government must wake up and not revert to the days of trickle response. The attacks on the state of Israel must lead to a severe response in Tehran. Good for Benny Gantz. Now, while there's not much that Israel can do to the Houthis, that the U.S. has not already done, they can do extensive damage to Iran and its infrastructure. Of course, the question is now, will they? Netanyahu's made threats before like this without following them through. However, at this time, he may feel that he has no choice, no matter what Iran and the U.S. are planning to do. So stay tuned. All right, headline number two. This is the one you want to pay attention to. As Israeli defenses fail, analysts explain how Houthi attacks have drained billions. This is from Ynet. In-depth interviews reveal how low-cost Houthi weapons are forcing the U.S. and its allies into a high-cost military response, draining resources and destabilizing global trade. When a $20,000 missile fired from Yemen Houthi rebels can bring down a U.S. Reaper drone worth over $30 million, the cost of war takes on a new and troubling shape. That imbalance is now defining the crisis in the Red Sea, where sustained attacks from Iranian-backed terrorists are draining Western defense budgets and disrupting the arteries of global commerce. Over 800 strikes have been carried out by the U.S. against Houthi positions since March 15th, yet the barrage of drones and missiles has not ceased. As Houthi forces target American, British, and Israeli-linked ships across one of the world's most vital maritime corridors, military and economic pressure is intensifying on the U.S. and its allies with no end in sight. All right. I asked my friend Nader about a story about Iran had just revealed they had developed a new missile that flies some 1,700 kilometers. And this is supposedly one that will basically fool radar, this and that. And I said, what do you think about this? Now, this is something we have exclusive here for you, and we're going to say as much as we can. There's more I could say because he kind of shared everything with me. But here's what he said. He said, these are not the pinpoint precision type, but they are swarms of kamikaze drones that are impossible to stop to confuse the warning systems. And 75% into the mass drone attack, then these powerful hardware with bigger warheads will find their way. Okay. Again, they're not precision type, but what they are, there's these, they send a ton of drones. This is what they did before. And in the midst of the drones, about 75% of the way through, there are these bigger, larger missiles that will do a lot of damage. So the drones are there to confuse. And that's, their tactic, this and that. And said impossible to stop and confuse the warning system. And he said the bigger warhead will find its way in. That's the problem with China. China can make $10,000 drones a day, can make 10,000 drones a day at a cost of about $350 per unit. And that is the thing that was the real problem here. The drones that would come in, as you can picture, scores of them. And in the midst, about 3/4 of the way through the drone attack, where you have these big ballistic missiles that have the payload there. And therein has lied the problem. Here comes the however. However, it was just shared with me. Basically, a new weapon has just been developed. It's been tested, proven, and that can thwart this. It should be revealed in a couple of days, and that will mean game over. And it's a weapon that has a way to take out these drones, to keep them from doing this, from running interference for these larger weapons. Now, he shared with me and not only a picture of what this new weapon is, but who it was developed by. And as we are talking right now, evidently it's being shipped to various theaters in the world, U.S. bases, this and that, to thwart any attacks. So what I'm putting together here, the 2 and 2 that always equals 4, that Donald Trump seemingly, he's playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. What he seems to be doing, he's been, kind of doing these talks with Witkoff, talking about Iran and kind of, spreading and everything out and spending some time about, a possible ceasefire and that, and with Gaza, with Iran, neutralizing instead of neutralizing their program with weapons, getting some type of agreement like the JCPOA of 10 years ago, and getting, not fighting a war, in other words, but getting everything in place by just negotiations. What he seems to be doing, as I see this story and as I hear it, is that I think what he is doing is waiting for these defense systems that are right now, as we speak, being shipped to various theaters around the world to be put into place that will thwart any attack. In fact, Nader said when he explained what this is, he says, game over. With these things in place, game over. The drones can no longer be a problem because of what's been developed by this company and this weapon that will soon be in use. Now, he told me, I said, I'll keep my mouth zipped up. He said, well, it's out there now, kind of, at least it will be in a day or two. So I'm not going to share any more. When more is revealed, I will share with you it. But basically, the bottom line is, if you're new here, my friend Nader, he works with special forces. He literally around the world. He tells me all these things that are going on military-wise that are many of them top secret. And I, of course, keep my mouth shut. And then he tells me, oh, you can talk about this now, but you got to wait on this one. Well, this is what he shared with me. Just when I asked him about this new missile that Iran's developed, he said that's not the problem any longer because of this new defense system that is being put in place even now as we speak in various theaters around the world. And so never a dull moment, is there? So we'll keep you posted on all that. And so it seems to me, and again, this is my take on this, Donald Trump knowing these systems would come into place, because if they do attack Iran, Iran will fight back, and they need some defense systems against Iran's drones and against their missiles also. Well, this new system will take care of those. So anyway, fascinating, isn't it? So that's the latest here. Now we have another story, number three headline, that also we've got some intel on also. Two mysterious explosions rock Iranian factories within an hour. Here we go. More accidents, more explosions in Iran. Opposition media says five injured petrochemical plant explosion in Qom, followed by an hour later a blast at a motorcycle factory in Mashhad, just days after the deadly port explosion. And we talked about three fires in Tehran. Near military bases were set the next day. Also, another explosion in a factory that day after that. That made the gunpowder is what it did. And so basically, we're seeing this. Now, here's the story. This is from Ynet. A series of unexplained explosions and fires have struck industrial facilities across Iran in recent days, with the latest incidents reported Sunday in the cities of Mashhad and Qom. Iranian media said a powerful explosion rocked a motorcycle factory in Mashhad in the country's north, igniting a fire in a warehouse containing tires and cardboard. The fire was later extinguished, and authorities have yet to confirm casualties or determine the cause of the blast. About an hour earlier, the opposition-run channel Iran International reported five people were injured in an explosion at a petrochemical raw materials plant in an industrial zone in the central city of Qom. The cause of the accident also remains unclear. On Saturday, Iran International reported a large fire at a cardboard factory in Karaj, near the capital Tehran. It was the latest in a string of similar incidents that have sparked growing concerns over industrial safety and possible acts of sabotage. All right, again, we've got a lot of new people here. We mentioned about 3 weeks ago that these things were coming in Iran. You'd start seeing all these attacks, sabotage here and there. And what I was told, by my friend Nodder. He says one cut won't kill you, but 1,000 will. So what's going on now? There are various groups inside Iran that are doing these things, that are sabotaging military installations that will make it harder and harder. In fact, we mentioned, remember last Saturday what went on a week ago Saturday. This port, which carries, it's the largest container port there for Iran. It's been about half of it seemingly has been destroyed. And what blew up were these missile fuel that is there to send, that is sent by China to Iran to send missiles, to Israel eventually and the United States down the line. But you can't fly missiles if there's no fuel. And so that was destroyed there. So you've got this sabotage going on. It will continue to go on. Again, various groups are doing it. And what the bottom line is, Iran, if even if there's no attack from the U.S. and Israel, they're going to try the best they can to neutralize Iran's capacity and ability to attack Israel or to attack other countries. So, again, one cut can't kill you, but 1,000 will. Iran is daily seeing these examples of sabotage taking its toll on its ability to fight. And like we said, look at them to continue in intensity and increase. Also, with respect to the Houthis, now we mentioned today, if you recall, about the problem there. There's something like, 800 different bombs that have been sent over to Yemen with the Houthis, with the U.S., and they sent four bombs yesterday, four missiles into Israel. And the one that got through today, this is the fifth one to the Ben-Gurion Airport. And the bombing that U.S. is doing is really having no long-term effect, it seems. There's still problems there. And so we talked about the possibility, what's necessary here, that others have suggested about boots on the ground that have to come to Yemen and go to these very distinct hidden places in Yemen and take care of the people there, you know, armed fighting, because the bombs and that by themselves is not going to work. Well, just let me say, we'll have stories on that in the future. I better leave it at that. But yeah, it's this. This is also in the works. So a lot of stuff going on here, and the Lord is amazing, allowing all this to take place. But it's fitting, like we say, what the Bible has to say about the last days, about what we expect the world to be like, and we're not surprised by any of it. But we see also Israel in the crosshairs of it, like we said today, at least on 7 different fronts, probably eight now, with Sudan fighting for its life. And there was a story just came out earlier about Netanyahu very upset with Trump with they're not on the same page. Well, maybe they are. Maybe there's some things going on we don't know about. So we're going to wait and see here. But these are interesting stories. And again, we'll share with you some of this that I was just told that again is not been revealed to the public yet, or at least in the process of it. And I don't want the Department of Defense coming over and asking me how I know all this stuff. Anyway, okay, headline number 4. Trump suggests it may not be possible to broker a peace in Ukraine as Putin leaves open the nuke option. This is from the New York Post, and this is another huge story. President Trump said Sunday that it may not be possible for the U.S. to broker an end to the war in Ukraine as Russian dictator Vladimir Putin left the door open for a nuclear option in the conflict. Despite claiming he would end the war within days of his second term, Trump said now he believes that a U.S. brokered permanent ceasefire after the 3 years of fighting between Ukraine and invader Russia may be out of reach, and that's the headline. Maybe it's not possible to do, he told NBC's Kirsten Welker on Meet the Press. There's tremendous hatred, just so you understand, Kirsten. He said, we're talking about tremendous hatred between these two men, Putin and Zelensky, and between, some of the soldiers, and frankly, between the generals of Ukraine and Russia. Okay. His comments came as Putin on Sunday tried to quell fears that the cost of the war might eventually push Moscow into using nuclear weapons to defeat Ukraine, although he didn't reject the idea outright. They wanted to provoke us, so we made mistakes, Putin said of the nuclear option. There has been no need to use those weapons, and I hope they will not be required. Russia has opened the door to potential use of the nuclear arsenal, the world's largest, by the way, that Russia has, in November when Putin signed a revamped version of the nation's doctrine allowing Moscow to launch a nuke in response to a broader range of attacks, as well as labeling nations that arm the Kremlin's enemy as possible targets. So Trump's pessimism, the article goes on to say, over the peace talks echoes the State Department's announcement Friday that the U.S. will end its efforts to broker peace if progress isn't made. We have enough strength and means to bring what was started in 2022 to a logical conclusion with the outcome Russia requires, as Putin boasted. So basically, he thinks we can win this. The outcome we started in 2022, we can finish the job. And so he's committed to the Ukraine war and rejection of any types of concessions, which has kept the American-led peace talks frozen and in place, much to the frustration of Kiev and Washington. All right, that's the story. Now, here's our response. Is the way things look now, it seems that Putin is looking for an absolute victory against Ukraine, not merely a ceasefire. Again, nobody knows what the eventual outcome will be, but we do know the war cannot last forever. These four stories again illustrate the biblical picture of the last days, Israel fighting on different fronts with no hope of a lasting peace. This may include an attack on Iran. We don't know. Russia flexing its military muscles and the United States seemingly helpless to do anything about it. As always, daily we see the events moving towards their predicted end, as has been recorded for us in Scripture. And the overarching story in all of this is that the Lord God, the living God, is in control of what's going on, and He's let us know ahead of time exactly what we should expect. So that's the takeaway here. This is a takeaway we have every day as we see all these events take place. And again, we don't know how they're all going to pan out in the short term, but we know how it's going to end in the long term. But we see the parts moving exactly where we expect them to from what the Bible has to say. And again, for full documentation on that, see our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end. It's a free download from our website, Educating Our World, along with the book, Look Up, a timeline of 50 last days events, which lists what's still to take place according to Scripture. We go into great detail explaining still what's to come. And we're seeing these things being fulfilled right before our very eyes. Like we've said, 70 specific details of these 25 signs have already been literally fulfilled, and 30 more are on the way. So it's an exciting time to be alive. And today we got, so like we said, some really interesting intel that looks like if there is an attack against Iran, the U.S. will be prepared to thwart it, the bases in the Middle East and other places around the world. So thank God for that. All right, I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.